So the equilibrium price tells you how prices and quantities are set. However, obviously, in the real world, prices change. If examiners are testing this area of the spec, there's obvious questions that they can ask. So going back to a paper from the early 2010s, you can see there's an increase in the price of cotton, and the question is, using the supply and demand diagram and the data, why has that price of cotton changed? Or this paper from around about the same time, you can see that the price of beef has gone up using the supply and demand diagram. Why? And here's one from the 2020s. There's a fall in the price of cobalt, and the question is, with reference to the information provided, draw a supply and demand diagram to show why the price of cobalt fell between June 2018 and June 2019. In other words, the questions are exactly the same. They haven't changed. You can look at an awful lot of papers and you will see effectively this question. So there are 5 reasons why a price may change across pretty much the entire spec. So the government might have a say, or government bodies might have a say. So, for example, the national minimum wage, that's the price, remember, it's the price of labour, that is set by the government. Similarly, regulators might, for example, set the price of retail gas, and they'll certainly be setting the maximum by which your mobile phone firms can increase their charges. So government does have an impact. Similarly, the business might change its objectives. On theme 3, we look at market structures and market objectives. So, for example, a business objective might go, say, from maximising sales to maximising profit, and that will have an impact on price. The market structure, again, covered in the same area on theme 3, may also change. So if, for example, a nationalised industry is privatised and opened up to competition, then that would mean that the market power for the largest firms would fall, and so they might have to adjust their price to account for the fact that there's competition. None of this has got anything to do with this video. We're going to be looking at changes in demand and changes in supply. So if you look at the factors that might change demand, that might shift that demand curve, we went through a whole load of them on the video on demand. If people's incomes change, if the demand for complements or substitutes change, if the population changes, if advertising changes, if the weather changes, technology, you name it, it's there. On the supply side, if there's a change in technology, there's a direct impact on supply. If costs go up or go down, there's going to be an impact. If the government changes indirect taxes or subsidies, if the productivity in an area changes, if there's investment, or if there's changes in things like weather, or there's a natural disaster, any of those changing will affect the fundamentals of demand and supply, and so we're going to get a new demand curve or a new supply curve, and that's going to have an impact on price. So pretty much anything affecting those things apart from price, because that causes an extension or contraction. So in terms of demand and supply, there are 2 reasons why price may potentially change. So if, say, there's an increase in income for a normal good or a decrease in income for an inferior good, if there is an increase in the price of a substitute, or there's a decrease in the price of a complement, for any of those reasons, demand may rise. And so we're going to draw a new demand curve on the right-hand side of our existing demand curve. And that will result in a new equilibrium price and quantity. So in this case, the price has gone up from around about £40 to around about £53, and the quantity has gone up from 60 units to about 88 or 89 units. And the other reason is a decrease in supply. So we have a new supply curve, S1, to the left-hand side of the existing supply curve. So again, we mark on the new equilibria. So the price has gone up from 40 to about 49, and the quantity has fallen from 60 to round about 39. So we get a higher price and a lower quantity, whereas with demand, of course, we get a higher price and a higher quantity. So if the supply curve moves, the price goes up, so demand contracts. So if we get a question about a price rise, we are looking for evidence that demand has gone up or supply has gone down, or frequently in questions, it's both of those things. And if price goes down, we are looking for evidence of a decrease in demand or an increase in supply, or both of those things. So here's yet another question where we are looking at the decrease in cocoa prices between February and December 2011. So the easy way to get a mark is that we draw up the original equilibrium price. You'll notice here I've actually marked it with the figure in the text, £2,153 per tonne. No reason why I should do that, but I want to pick up the application mark. Had I simply left it as P, that would have been fine. But what I'm looking for now is evidence that demand has changed. Now, somewhere in the text, there might be this evidence. And as you can see here, it says the price fell. This follows a decrease in consumption from Europe, the world's largest consumer of the commodity, amid fears that it was entering a recession. So that is the evidence I need to shift my demand curve. So I would write something along the lines of, line 2 suggests there is a decrease in consumption from Europe. This will cause the demand curve to move left from D to D1, and I would show that on the graph. So now I'm looking for evidence as to whether the supply curve has moved as well. Sometimes on questions just one curve moves, sometimes it's both curves, but it's normally pretty well laid out within the question. So in this case, what I've highlighted in green, it says at the same time there was a very good cocoa harvest in the Ivory Coast, the world's biggest producer, which supplies around 40% of global output. So once again, I show this on the graph as a right shift in supply, again with a nice little arrow just to tell you or the examiner what has happened. Incidentally, you'll notice here that I've used two different colours. I've used one colour for the original demand and supply curve, that's my red, and then I've changed it to purple for the new demand and supply curve. Examiners will tell you to only use one colour. Use two if it helps you. So we have a new demand curve, D1. We have a new supply curve, S1. And where the new demand curve cuts the new supply curve, that is going to be the new equilibrium. Again, I've labelled it P1. I've also labelled it £1,410. Don't necessarily need the £1,410. I've also marked in the quantity change, the new quantity. Sometimes it's above the old one, sometimes it's below the old one, sometimes it's actually on the old one. Depends upon how you've drawn the graph. Doesn't matter because the question asks about price. So that is how you get your marks. Go back and look at some of the other questions, see if you can draw the diagram, see if you can find the explanation, or dig out almost any paper. The old style papers are best, the pre-2015 papers, because it comes up on pretty much every paper, and there are a lot of those old papers. Thanks.